You're listening to a recording of a show broadcast on radiopod.co.uk. All facts and figures and reference to topical content were correct at the time of broadcast. All competition entries for this broadcast have now been closed. To find out about future live shows or listen back to other recordings of shows, log on to radiopod.co.uk. You're listening to Radiopod, free pop-up radio shows about you and your life. One more minute to our next live show. Downloading show information.
Hello, my name's Rob Smith, and over the next hour I'll be catching up with a whole bunch of singers and musicians who were really famous in the 1980s. I'll be finding out what they're up to now and what their memories are of the 1980s, including some crazy rock and roll moments. I talked to Toyah Wilcox, Doctor and the Medics, Roachford, Slade, Level 42, Blancmange, Deacon Blue, The Christians and Go West.
Sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. Radiopod. Get into it.
And welcome to the show. Coming up soon, find out which joke Toyah Wilcox played on Margaret Thatcher. And later, why Go West nearly got into a fight with Kiefer Sutherland over Julia Roberts. But now, let's catch up with Mark King from Level 42. Hey Mark, how are you?
Hey, I'm all right, thank you, Rob.
I did read somewhere the other day, this is going way back to the very beginning of the early stages of the band, that the name Level 42 was inspired by The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Is that right?
It is actually, yeah. It's, the number 42 was the answer to the ultimate question, you know, the meaning of life and why we're here and everything. And it's the mathematical answer that the computer Deep Thought came up with.
And a little bit about you. Now, you actually grew up on the Isle of Wight, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm an island boy. I still live on the Isle of Wight, actually. It's a lovely place to raise a family, for sure. And although, you know, when I sort of hit 18, I set off for London to try and make it with, with my music career. As soon as the career was off and running, I couldn't wait to get back. It's a lovely place.
It is. I was only there yesterday, actually. I did the whole tourist thing, caught the ferry to Yarmouth, and then went
fantastic!
And then went to the Needles as well, and saw the rocket testing area that they've got there that was back in the 1950s.
Yeah, that's right. I'll tell you, because I was watching on the news this morning too. There was some dude that lived at Shide here on the island was way ahead in terms of earthquake technology, and like 100 years ago, and all the stuff that he did and all the data that he did, a bit like the rocket engineers here on the island, have gone on and they're still using it in Japan today. So the Isle of Wight, basically, Rob, is at the centre of the universe. And
you used to own a pub on the island, which obviously a lot of people think the pub is the centre of the universe. I totally agree with that.
It was actually, it was a cafe bar, and it was the first one on the island. I opened it in 1990. It was a jeweller's when I bought it, but I'd sort of done so much touring around with the band throughout Europe and the rest of the world, and what it seemed was missing on the Isle of Wight was something that was a bit more sort of contemporary in terms of, just sort of going and chilling out and reading a newspaper and getting a good coffee or, just a nice, good quality beer or something. And we set that up, and I had that for 10 years, and it sort of went off and running now, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them. It's like a little chain going now.
Cool, brilliant. Obviously, I want to talk about the music, and what's always impressed me, you get people like Phil Collins, who plays the drums and sings at the same time. But you play the bass, not just normal guitar, but you play a bass and sing at the same time. How difficult is it to do that?
It's not that difficult. I mean, it's something that I do, because I started singing when I began playing bass as part of Level 42, so it's something that I've just done all the time. So I don't know. For me, it seems quite easy, Rob.
So men can multitask, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. And we reverse better as well.
Do you know what? I'm actually not going to comment on that because my wife is better at reversing than I am. But in everything else, I'm obviously a lot.
Well, that's a dreadful admission to make, Rob. You must be awful.
No, I'm all right, but I quite often I do it, and then I just have to move a bit forward and then go back again, whereas she tends to do it first time. She's a bit like the Stig off of Top Gear. She can skid round, handbrake it and get into a space that way. She's amazing. She might be the Stig. It might explain the helmet that she's got by the side of the bed. I don't know.
Hey, listen, you leave your helmet out of this, all right?
Mark King from Level 42 on the phone right now. Now, Mark, I just want to say, my memory of Level 42 is when I was about 11 years old and we got our very first CD player, and one of the first albums we got was Running in the Family. And I'll always remember being absolutely blown away with the sound quality that came out of the speakers for that album.
It's funny because we were we were obviously one of the first bands that was available on CD, because the sort of pioneers of CD production were Philips, and Philips owned Polydor Records, and which was our label. So consequently, when they would sort of put out these new things, I think Dire Straits were the very first band ever to go onto the CD properly, and I think we were sort of number 2 or 3, sort of following along pretty much in their footsteps. And there was there's a little bit later on, there was do you remember the Laserdisc, Rob? Do you remember when the Laserdisc came on?
Yeah.
They asked if I'd sort of do this thing for the BBC News from the roof gardens in Kensington. Was sort of launching this great new medium that everyone was going to have, which was going to be the Laserdisc, because not only do you have the fantastic quality music with CD quality, but you also had incredible picture quality. And the thing is that the one machine that they brought over in the country didn't work, so what they had plugged in behind it was a VHS recorder. And so when I'm there, I'm having to sort of hit the button. I'm going, look at the quality of this. I'm like turning the VHS on, and it's all wobbly and crackly. It was absolutely appalling. The things we used to do.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer, like, the good old vinyl and cassette, or do you like the CD sound, or do you like digital downloads, or do you not have a preference?
No, I'm very much, I love the technology that's available at the moment, I have to say. The ease of being able to just, go onto iTunes and download any track that you just heard on the radio or that somebody's been telling you about. I mean, that's a phenomenal thing to be able to do. And it's kind of changed in the way that I think bands think about making music, because certainly I'm working at the moment on just coming up with 5 or 6 dance tracks that I want to sort of get up on iTunes, rather than sort of slave away and make a 12-track album.
Because you have obviously done a lot of solo work as well as with Level 42 as well. And didn't you did an album called Trash, which I read on the internet that you actually physically burnt yourself at home and then posted out. Is that right?
I made an album in 1998 for Eagle Records called One Man, and I sort of toured that. And the album didn't do particularly well, but what it did was it got me involved in having a Mark King website. So when I got back off of that tour, and I sort of went in the studio thinking what I'm going to do next, and it occurred to me that I had all these ideas that I hadn't really used and that were just lying around, demos and stuff that I'd never finished. But if I could just sort of tighten them up a bit, maybe some people would be interested on the website, the hardcore fans. So I posted a message up there saying, look, I've got some demos and stuff, 10 tracks or whatever. If you'd like to hear a copy, send us 15 quid and I'll burn you off a CD. And it went nuts, it just really did. And it keeps going, and I still sort of sell it online today, and it's still one of the most popular things in the Level 42 shop.
And do you physically do everything yourself with that, or have you got other people who do that for you?
No, I do. I can take it to the bleeding post box and stick it in the
It's rock and roll, isn't it?
Yeah, it's rock and roll, yeah. And I even post it too, because when people grizzle about posters, they go, okay, for £2.50 for postage. So it's not really, mate. It's £2.50 for shipping, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like you've got the stamps, you've got the bag, you've got the flipping diesel to get my car up to the post box, and you're paying my time to do that. So £2.50, I think it's a flipping bargain.
But I think that's amazing, because you do think that, I order something online and then somebody in an office somewhere sends it. But for you to have actually physically touched it, put it in the packaging, and gone to the post box, I think that is absolutely awesome. That is brilliant.
Well, that was back then.
Oh, right, yeah, not now.
So for £2.50, I forget it.
Radio Pod. Get into it.
That was Mark King from Level 42. You're listening to Radio Pod, free pop-up radio shows about you and your life, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. And right now, it's a 1980s celebrity special. My name's Rob Smith, and next I'll be talking to Toyah Wilcox about a joke she played on Margaret Thatcher. But right now, it's The Doctor. Not Doctor Who, but the Doctor from Doctor and the Medics, who are most famous for their version of Spirit in the Sky. Doctor, are you a real doctor?
No, I'm a failed medical student, but I was a St John's first aider, if that counts. When I was a Cub Scout leader years ago, I got my St John's ambulance award.
So if there was ever a medical emergency at one of your gigs and somebody said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" it'd be very embarrassing for you to say, "Well, I'm kind of, but not really, only by name."
I could still probably deal with most things, to be honest. But I think it's about. I mean, I'm not. I think you take your St John's ambulance award every couple of years, but I think mine ran out about 30 years ago. But I can still remember the basics. I'm sure I'll be all right.
And is it true that you used to be a DJ as well?
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I am again. The story of that is before the band started, I was a club DJ, and in fact I started just 31 years ago at a club called Alice in Wonderland in London, and we used to do Monday night. And it did very well, and it was great. I mean, the Damned played there, the Cult, ourselves, Jesus and the Mary Chain. I was the first person to throw them off stage.
Wow, brilliant.
An accolade to my name.
So obviously you were on stage in the 1980s with, a lot of cool bands. You were doing the circuit. I mean, what was it like around that time that you were on stage doing gigs?
Well, it's funny, really, because a lot of the bands we play with now, like, and we do the Rewind concerts and everyone else, we never really toured with back in the day, because we were a bit different. We were kind of more of a rock band, and we tour with bands like the Damned and the Cult. But the kind of people we tour with now who are going on this kind of 80s circuit, we never saw them. But now it's kind of like we're all kind of friends. Everyone gets on those gigs very well, and everybody knows each other. We all had our sort of hits in the 80s, and it's only like in the last 10 years we've got to meet and get to know each other. So it's quite strange, really.
But you were on stage with quite a few people at Sport Aid 1988. I know this because my wife saw you at was it at Wembley or?
God, it was at a football club, but it wasn't Wembley. I can remember it. My God, yeah, but she probably knows the lineup better than I do.
Just going back to all of the artists that you performed with in the 80s, do you actually have any or many celebrity phone numbers in your phone contacts list?
I don't know how you define fame, Alvin Stardust is because I do a lot with Alvin and phone him up and he phones me up and we have chats and sort stuff out. That's quite nice. That's quite bizarre. Les McEwen, lots of people down from the 70s era. Toyah, I don't think I've got any A or B list celebrities, they're kind of down on that level,
Have you had any sort of incidents over the years on stage where crazy things have happened, or your craziest rock and roll incident, whether it be on stage or in a hotel room or whatever?
Oh my God, I mean, yes, we did and still do, and I mean, we were quite a band to get ourselves in a lot of pickles. And I mean, the thing is, when you were touring, you've got to remember, in 1 year alone, we did 320 shows. We were touring flat out for the entire year, flying, and which is virtually, it seemed like every day you're touring. So you do go a bit mental with all that. You kind of lose yourself because you're home, and so and some of it can be quite boring. So you have to kind of make your own entertainment, and things sometimes got a bit messy. I think we were banned from a hotel in Holland because the first night we decided it would be. We took the entire roadie's bedroom and made it at the end of the corridor. So that when he got back drunk and he couldn't be bothered to go in his room, so he just got into bed. And of course, the next day, everybody comes out, looks down the end of the corridor, and there he is in bed with his entire room, the contents of the room there. And then the next night, it got worse. Somebody had the idea of the old thing of putting everything out the window, except the problem was the window was one of those ones with only a little thin opening bit at the top. And the first thing they decided to get out was the bed. And we couldn't get it out. So he came in, saw his bed hanging out the window, went to sleep in the bath, and the next thing is our manager is having breakfast, and the manager of the hotel comes storming into him at breakfast and was effing and blinding and telling him he had 10 minutes to get out. And Andy had no clue what was happening, and the manager said, "You must come with me outside," and pointed up, and there, fair enough, was a bed hanging out the window. So I think that was kind of... That's a fairly rock and roll story that I can remember that's decent.
Now, you are most famous for your version of Spirit in the Sky, but what do you think to the Gareth Gates version?
I think it was for comedy relief, which is brilliant. It raised a lot of money, so which is fantastic. And I just think at the time, and for comic relief, it was what it was. It was in its time. It was a very good version. People said, "Oh, you must be a bit cheesed off. They've done it." I said, "Well, no, because Gareth Gates wasn't gigging. We were. So because the song was a success, we kind of got a boost of gigs at that time. We got more
that's
work
fair
out
point.
of it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gareth, for the work. But what is interesting now is people, when the song is played, they don't play that version. They still play ours. So the interesting thing about it was Norman Greenbaum's last major hit. It was our last hit, and it was his last hit. So if anybody is having a string of hits and you're bored with it and you want to end your career, record Spirit in the Sky, job done.
Just before you go, all celebrities have what's called a rider, which is the stuff that they have backstage. So I would request 10 pallets of water and 15 pallets of whiskey or whatever it is. What's going to be on your rider?
Well, I've got to tell you, I'm going to bore people. We used to do one of those silly riders. We used to have one, but what you realise is at the end of the day, they lose your gigs because, if you put out a rider that's got someone 200-300 quid, they think, oh no, we're not going to book them. They want a silly rider. So we've changed. Our rider now is very, very simple. It's kind of soft drinks, and if there's a couple of lagers, fine, and a bit of food. But it did used to be. We had a bottle of brandy, bottle of whiskey, 2 bottles of wine, 48 cans of lager. I can still remember it. Packet of Rennies, a packet of
Rennies.
Swan Vesta matches. Yeah, we used to put Rennies on there because I used to get terrible indigestion, and it was because you'd be touring and not eating, and you'd be starving, and you'd get to the gig, you'd sound check, and because you're so hungry, you'd eat, and then you'd be on stage an hour later, which is awful. It's the worst thing you can do. So I always have indigestion. We had a packet of Rennies on there, Swan Vesta matches we always put on there just to be awkward. It was this humongous rider, and I know when we went around America, some of the promoters had great fun trying to buy things like Rennies and Swan Vestas out in America. But we did have one of those excess all areas riders, but we've toned down now.
It's a 1980s celebrity special on Radio Pod with Rob Smith, and you've just heard from the Doctor of Doctor and the Medics. Coming up soon, Roachford talks about being in the Alan Partridge movie Alpha Papa, and later we take a behind-the-scenes look at Slade's most famous song, Merry Christmas Everyone, because they weren't feeling too Christmassy at the time they recorded it. Find out why later. Right now, though, on the phone, it's Toyah Wilcox, who is famous for not just music, but writing books, being on stage, in films, on kids' TV. You've done it all, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I am 55, so I've had time to fit it all in. It's not all happened in kind of 1 year.
And out of all of those, what would you say you enjoyed the most?
That's a question I find impossible to ask. I'm very, very lucky. I get up in the morning and I do what I like doing. I don't do things if I don't enjoy it, because when you're in the entertainment world, I think you've got to enjoy what you're doing so the audience can enjoy it too. Having
said that, though, do you actually look back on, because I can't believe it's 10 years ago you were on I'm a Celebrity, but did you actually walk out of that jungle thinking, I wish I hadn't have done that?
No, I don't think that about any job that I do, because everything has its benefits. So, and everything has its opportunities as well. So no, I don't regret doing it at all. If anything, I'm grateful I did it when I did do it, because I think it's a much harder show for the contestants now than it was 10 years ago. If I was asked to do it now, I think I'd give a definite no, because what they have to do, I couldn't parachute into the jungle. And when we went in, we were taken in helicopters, and that was scary enough, because they fly really close to each other. And I remember at one point, as we were going in, we said to the pilot, really, do you mind not going so close to the other helicopter? They really are daredevils in everything that they do, and it was an absolutely exhilarating experience. But I'm 10 years older now, and I think I just wouldn't be able to go through that. And I certainly couldn't do all that eating stuff. With us, they just starved us. Now people have to have insects dropped on them. They have to eat kind of rancid food. I couldn't do that.
Didn't you do Tea Time in Hell, though?
Yes, I did, but I didn't have to eat anything. They put me in a kind of cesspit that they'd been making for at least 3 weeks, and it was far from fragrant, and it had kind of larvae in it, and it was crawling with creepy crawlies, but there weren't any of those huge spiders, the huntsman spiders, which I just couldn't deal with. Just to remind anyone who can't remember which series you were in, it was series 2, and that's when Phil Tufnell was King of the Jungle, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was the famous one where John Fashanu had the eel helmet, which I absolutely find hilarious when I still watch it now. Well, he was just unbelievable. I didn't see him eat for the whole period I was in, and I was in for over 2 weeks. He was just a man mountain. He was so disciplined and so incredible. It just amazed me, because he kept training and he had no food. He refused to eat the food that they gave us. So, and I remember I arrived back home at Heathrow with him, and when we walked into the arrival hall, everyone burst out in applause because he had been so incredible. You were also on the show with Linda Barker, Wayne Sleep, Anthony Worrell Thompson, Daniela Westbrook and Sian Lloyd as well. Out of all those people, who would you say you got on with the most? I got on with all of them, but I think part of the problem with our series 2, was that we'd made a pact that we weren't going to fight. And I think the important thing about this programme is that people do fight, but they flew us all out together, so we all managed to get together and say, look, we're not going to fall into that trap.
And it's down to the editing of the programme as well, isn't it?
They know what they're going to do before you're even out there. They have to. And I think that's the genius of the programme. I asked to be on it. They didn't approach me because I just think it's absolute genius.
And also, amongst your TV credits, I mean, you've done a lot of serious stuff, but also you've done sort of children's TV as well, which is just amazing. Like the Teletubbies, for example.
I've done a lot of children's TV. I've done all the voices on the first 6 series of Brum. I've done Pod, and I do the opening and closing narration on Teletubbies. So, yeah, I've always done children's TV. I enjoy it immensely.
Toyah, I want to sort of, go back to the 1980s. I mean, what was that period like for you?
It was a whirlwind. In fact, it's probably the least decade that I think about because it was such a whirlwind. It's quite hard to pinpoint anything. It's just an absolute tidal wave. Everything was going on the whole time. I can remember doing Top of the Pops, and you'd work on Top of the Pops from 10 in the morning till about 10 at night. Then you'd be getting a plane over to Belgium to do a TV show the next day, then a plane to Italy. It was just non-stop. Very, very exciting. I loved every minute. But, boy, they filled your time.
Actually, I want to go back even further than the 1980s, because I've been told that you had an incident once with an alarm clock and a very famous MP.
Well, I went to school in Birmingham, to a very, very posh school. It was an all-girls private school. And in 1972, the Minister of Education was Margaret Thatcher. And she came to visit our school. And I had absolutely no idea who she was or how important she was. But I managed to sneak about 3 or 5 alarm clocks under the stage and set them to go off during her speech, which they did. And she just ignored it, but everyone knew it was me, so I was in my usual detention the next day.
And then what about when you got into, into the music industry, etc.? Did you continue with your pranks and get up to any crazy rock and roll moments?
I probably did, but I can't remember them. I know I've got a lifetime ban from the Britannia Hotel in Manchester for swinging from the chandelier, which was 4 floors up. But I can't remember most of the things I got up to because it really was a kind of twice daily occurrence.
Let's come back right up to date now. How would you spend your days these days, and particularly like on a Sunday as well?
I work every day of the week, so Sunday's no exception. I'm in my office 4 hours every day, because I have to deal with America as well as England. For me, walking is the only pleasure I really love to do, and I don't always get that time. And then I'm travelling.
Right, okay.
If I'm playing Glasgow, I have to get there, and if I'm playing Plymouth, I have to get there. So it's full on the whole time, even now I'm 55.
Do you ever see yourself slowing down, though, at all? Or do you going to keep going until you can do no more?
I'm slowing down in certain instances. Physically, I'm definitely slowing down. But the work is still there. And if you're sitting in front of a camera, you can do that forever. But I enjoy my work, and I'm saying no to more things these days. I'm definitely kind of getting choosier about what I do.
Right, okay.
Radio Pod.
That was Toyah Wilcox. You're listening to Radio Pod, free pop-up radio shows about you and your life, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. It's a 1980s celebrity special with Rob Smith. Next, I catch up with Ricky Ross from Deacon Blue, and you can hear what his kids have been posting on his Facebook page. And later, hear about Go West, who nearly got into a fight with Kiefer Sutherland over Julia Roberts. But right now, Andrew Roachford from the band Roachford. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yourself?
Yeah, really good. Now, when somebody said to me, Rob, there's a chance for you to interview Roachford, instantly, like within split seconds, the first thing that came into my mind was Cuddly Toy, because that is just such an awesome song. And,
Thank you very much.
And still sounds great on the radio today. I mean, it instantly takes me back to the late 80s when my brother bought his Ford Escort XR3i. We used to drive around it and just play that song constantly on full blast. And it's just such a great song, isn't it?
Yeah, it was so much fun to make, and I think that kind of comes across in the actual song, and that's what people get from it. It was such a good moment of light-hearted merriment.
But it's certainly lasted. I mean, it's been used in, I think, Grand Theft Auto 4. I think it was used.
Yeah.
But it's in the latest Alan Partridge movie as well.
Yeah, as well.
Does that make you feel proud?
Yeah, it was quite funny because I actually went to cinema. I'm a big Steve Coogan fan, and I went to cinema and see it, and it was a surreal moment, like to see him sort of attempting to sing along to the second verse. And
did you know it was going to be in the movie before you actually saw it then?
Yes, I did know. I did know, but I had no idea how it was going to present itself, so to speak. Yeah, I just like I say, I'm a big fan of his, and I've always loved his sense of humour.
And how did you actually get into music in the first place?
Well, the Roachford family is like generations deep in music. I mean, my grandmother would insist that everyone, had to learn an instrument. That was part of like a family thing. And so when I grew up, there was always musicians around and a piano there, and I just one day decided that I was going to join the band and started plonking on the piano, and the noise was so bad apparently that my mum said, right, you've got to get him some lessons or kick him out.
Brilliant. So basically you always were going to do something to do with music. There was never any other option?
Not really. I mean, obviously when you're at school and you sort of make that announcement that, that's what I want to be. I'm going to be a full-time working musician. All the alarm bells start ringing with the teachers, and, they were calling meetings with my mum saying, we got to sort of get him to stop all this music lark and get himself a proper career. And thankfully my mum, obviously being from a family that did music as a career, she didn't take that on, but, it's been a very different story.
Yeah, but I was kind of a similar sort of situation as you, that really, I mean, at school I said, I want to be a radio DJ, because my voice was breaking at the time. I was 13, 14 years old. And the careers teacher was the same thing. It's like, oh, no, it's very difficult to get into, you'll never do that. And I proved them wrong. I actually did it. I'm not very good at it, but I proved them wrong. I actually went ahead and did it. So,
it's a good feeling to prove them wrong, I tell you, because you got people who actually aren't in the industry telling you that it's really difficult, and they have got no idea because they've never actually stepped foot in it.
Exactly, and I think it's nice just to have that drive and determination. In fact, sometimes them telling you that you're not going to make it actually spurs you on a little bit more.
It does, because you've got a lot to prove. I think the difference now, you've got all the sort of X Factor, Idol and all those things, is that for me, a lot of the emphasis is put on fame and actually not on the music, and I find that a little bit strange. That's a very weird way to come into the music industry, where you start off famous and then you have to get your music together. Yeah. It's kind of a reverse scenario.
On the phone right now, I've got Andrew Roachford from the band Roachford. So you've actually toured recently with your band, but you've also been working with other artists as well. Tell me about that.
I worked on a project with Mike Rutherford from Genesis, which was Mike and the Mechanics project, and I did an album with him, and we've been touring together. I've been singing lead vocals with Mike and the Mechanics, and that was kind of something very different from what I do, and I quite liked the sort of challenge in the fact that, it was something I could do and still do the Roachford thing,
Brilliant. So it's not you replacing him as lead singer of Mike and the Mechanics, it's basically you working together on stage?
Yeah, I mean, there's Mike and the Mechanics has always been kind of a fluid thing where they've had different singers, and I just got a call from Mike saying he's doing a new album, would I be interested in doing some co-writing, and I ended up not just co-writing but going out on tour with them because the chemistry worked. We get on really well.
My name's Rob Smith, and you're listening to a 1980s celebrity special on RadioPod, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. You've just heard from Andrew Roachford from the band Roachford. Coming up next, Neil Arthur from Blancmange, who reveals how at one gig it was like being in the movie Spinal Tap because everything on stage went wrong. And then later we take a behind-the-scenes look at Slade's most famous song, Merry Christmas Everyone, because they weren't feeling too Christmassy at the time that they recorded it. Right now, though, on the phone, it's Ricky Ross from Deacon Blue. How are you?
I'm very well, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Obviously famous for songs such as Dignity, Chocolate Girl, Fergus Sings the Blues, Real Gone Kid, Wages Day, many more as well. But what is impressive is I've been reading on the internet, as of 2012, Deacon Blue's total album sales stood at 6 million, with 12 UK top 40 singles, along with 2 UK number one albums as well. And that's a nice track record to have, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. I mean, it's nice that people have bought records and still like the songs.
And does it make you feel a bit? Well, is it a bit scary when you hear the facts and figures like that in sort of black and white?
Well, I don't really think too much about it, but what I do love, the fact, is that people do know the material and people still listen to the material and still like the songs, and the songs have become part of people's lives. That's amazing. That's just, you could never imagine that when you started.
You've written for other artists as well, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Will Young, James Blunt, Ronan Keating, Jamie Cullum, and a few others.
And also, very recently, you've re-released Raintown on vinyl, and also your latest album, The Hipsters, with another couple of albums going to be remastered onto vinyl as well. So what was the idea about releasing on vinyl?
Vinyl has definitely, over the last few years, made a comeback. It's made a reappearance, and people like it. No sooner have we remastered everything on CD, then everyone's saying, when's the vinyl coming out? So people are liking listening to it on vinyl. I also like the look of it. The 12-inch single, the 12-inch album was a great looking thing. You get artwork there that fitted that. But if you, over the last few years, indie bands and so on have brought out vinyl. It's then become a kind of merchandising item at desks, merchandising stalls at gigs and so on. And it's quite collectible. And inevitably, people who love music, I think, love the vinyl album.
And do you know what I love about vinyl as well is that I love the smell of it. It's got a certain smell.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's obviously the actual stuff that it's made from, but it's very unique.
And the sleeves too. I think the lovely fresh cardboard sleeves are really printed. All sort of smells good. It's a whole tactile thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Not so good when you're a DJ though, because you've got to lug them all around.
Yes, that's right. It's massive. And you've got to fish out your record deck and make sure you've got something to play it on. But I think it's worth it. I mean, it's certainly just worth it from the bottom end point of view. It's just a lovely big sound.
Ricky, I know Google can be a very scary thing, okay? You can search for absolutely anything on it. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But one thing that did come up, which I didn't know about, was that did you start out as a school teacher?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you came across Rick Ross, the rapper. That's what most people find out.
Is there a rapper as well called Rick Ross?
Yeah, there's Rick Ross, the rapper. He's a big sort of rapper in the States, and he's a kind of big sort of gangster rapper, and so it's very funny. So my kids were quite amused when I put his picture up on my Facebook for a while.
Yo, check this out.
Yeah, with all bitches around him. It's fantastic.
Brilliant, fantastic. Let's just talk really briefly about Lorraine. Obviously, you got married to Lorraine a few years ago now.
23 years ago.
Good job you remembered that. Now, she's gone on to do other stuff as well. Like she's done a bit of acting as well, hasn't she?
Yeah, she's quite busy with that. She's recently doing a lot of stuff at the theatre for the National Theatre of Scotland, and she was with them last week. She's busy. Everyone's doing different things when they're not doing the band.
That was Ricky Ross of Deacon Blue. You're listening to Radiopod, free pop-up radio shows about you and your life, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. And it's a 1980s celebrity special with Rob Smith. Up next, Gary Christian from The Christians, who tries his hand at comedy. More on that soon. And also Go West's Running with Keitha Sutherland. But right now, it's Neil Arthur from the band Blancmange. How are you?
I'm not bad at all, thank you very much.
Brilliant. So you're actually now back with a re-release of your original debut EP, Irene and Mavis, and also Happy Families has been kind of... have you rejigged it a little bit?
Well, a complete rejig. When we were asked to go and do the tour, I wanted to do something that kind of moved everything forward and offered something new. So I re-recorded the whole of Happy Families, and the result is Happy Families 2.
And just go back to the 80s as well. I mean, you used to hang around, or you've been on, the same stage as people like Depeche Mode and Soft Cell and Japan, and even Grace Jones as well. Yeah, which is pretty awesome. I mean, what was it like, sort of around those times? What do you remember of being around those sort of bands?
Well, we were good mates with Depeche Mode, and that all came about by us getting involved with Steve-O, who did the Some Bizarre sample album. We had a track on there called Sad Day, and Depeche Mode had photographic, and I can't remember now what the Soft Cell track was, so I haven't actually got a copy of the album, but I know Soft Cell were on it amongst many other bands. And we got to know them, particularly Depeche Mode, and Daniel Miller, who ran Mute, and we were invited to go on tour with them quite a few times. So it was great, really good fun. Just coincidentally, Vince Clarke has just done a remix of Living on the Ceiling.
Oh, right.
the new version of Unhappy Families too.
Neil, what I want to know is, out of all the years that you've been, doing tours and making music, what's your craziest rock and roll moment? Or there are too many to remember?
I can tell on there. I could tell you, of course there were some ridiculous things. We were doing this tour in Europe, and we got into Germany, and I ended up getting the lurgy. So we had to postpone one date, and then we had 2 days off. And after those days, we were playing big gig in Paris. I went to see a specialist about my, I suppose it might have been a kind of laryngitis or something like that. Well, I'm going to give you this special medicine. You mustn't talk for the next 48 hours. And then they said, before the gig, you just do a gentle warm-up exercise, but no sound check. Come and see me an hour before, 2 hours before you go on stage, no sound check, and then come back, do your exercises, go on stage. You'll be fine. Okay, so great. Band does a sound check without me. I come back, walk up into the dressing room, everybody gets changed. I do my warm-up exercises. We all kind of do a bit of a hug before we go on, and everybody goes on. And I always came on stage after the beginning of the first song. Anyway, I thought, well, I better get myself on stage. And I could hear the intro music starting, so I knew how to get down there. And then I suddenly realised I didn't know where the bloody stage was. So I hadn't been there, had I? And everybody had gone. So I'm in this building I've never been into before, up in the, kind of east somewhere, out the way in a wing, in this massive...
It sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it? You have those nightmares where you think you're flying, or you go to work with no clothes on. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was flying, I was naked, I was everything. It really felt like that. And it was a real electronic spinal tap moment. Anyway, my tour manager at that point, was really shouting it. I could hear him shouting in the distance, and he shouted, "You!" And we could hear the music. I knew the first song had started. They were going hell for leather at it. And I knew what bar I had to come in and sing on. Anyway, so eventually my tour manager finds me and drags me down these labyrinths. I come running on stage, and I know I've missed the first verse, so I kind of join in on the second verse. At the end of the song, everybody's in hysterics. The audience and all the band. And I look around, apart from Stephen, who's looking a bit dinged off with me. And I just thought, oh, God, never mind, I'll just get on with it. So we finished the set, and he's still not that happy, I could see that. We came up, and I said, I'm really sorry I was late on, and it was a really good gig. What was the problem? And he said, I'm not bothered about you being late on. He said, I tripped over my monitor when I went on stage, and I knocked all my keyboards over. It turned into a bit of a comedy evening.
Oh, it really is like Spinal Tap, isn't it? That's amazing.
Radio Pod. Get into it.
It's a 1980s celebrity special on Radio Pod with Rob Smith, and you've just heard from Neil Arthur from the band Blancmange. Next, catching up with Dave Hill from Slade, he talks about the moment they recorded their most famous song, Merry Christmas Everyone, because they weren't feeling too Christmassy at the time, and he reveals what job Sir Bob Geldof was doing before he was famous for being in the Boomtown Rats. But now it's Gary Christian from the band The Christians, and you've recently been celebrating 25 years in the business.
Unbelievable. I can't believe it. 25 years, where's it gone? We did an album as to celebrate the 25 years. Actually, the whole year has been wonderful, actually. It's been carried on round to the 26th year. It hasn't stopped, really.
It's a bit of a different industry nowadays to what it was back then and when you were in the charts.
I don't actually get it these days. I understand, download, okay, fine. But where's the physical copy? I want something to read, something to look at, something to hold, I'm still in that kind of school, where you went out to the shop and you bought a CD or an album or whatever, and you had it, you took it home and you unwrapped it and you looked at it and cherished it. But nowadays it's all done a bit downloady and cyber, and nobody knows what's going on, But it's
having the lyrics inside and the smell of the printed material and all those.
Exactly.
It's part of the experience, isn't it?
We keep losing, we keep chipping away at life, really, somewhere. And it's all becoming very kind of cyber worldy, it's not real somewhere.
And what about the actual artists? I mean, what do you think to shows like The X Factor and The Voice?
Well, I don't watch it for one thing. I think it's a dangerous thing. I think it's, it seems like Cowell has cornered the market in kind of what people are allowed to listen to, in music, somewhere. And I hate that, it's kind of monopolised the whole thing. Whereas, they took off Top of the Pops, they took off... there's only Jules Holland left, and that's really late at night.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
The only thing we've got, and the kids have got to listen to, is... are these other kids who are crying about, this is my life, I need to do this, I got to, if I don't do this, I don't know what I'm going to do. What is that all about? I don't understand it.
Apart from those sort of artists, do you actually listen to any other artists that are around today at all?
Yeah, well, I call me an old stick in the mud, but I tend to listen to what I was listening to when I was 17, 18, 19, and what actually got me into music itself, get that One Direction out the way. Can I say that on the air?
I just have done, mate.
Radio Pod.
So on the phone right now, it's Gary Christian from the band The Christians, and you did a retro tour recently with a few bands of the 1980s, including Hue and Cry. Did you actually know them back then, though?
Back in the 80s, no, we never crossed paths at all. We knew of their music, obviously. They were always in the charts anyway, weren't they? So we knew of them and we hated them. And it's like that. Oh, I can't stand that Hue and Cry. Yeah. Even though we really liked them secretly, we didn't say that. But when you meet these guys, 20 odd years later, they're just lovely guys,
Exactly. I suppose back in those days as well, you're all, trying to get a slice of the market. You're all vying to get to number one, all the rest of it. And and that's probably where the hate comes from. But like you said, secret. Well, not hate. That's a bit harsh. But obviously, secret. You actually do admire them and you like their music. But it's all about the competition to get in the charts, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, but we first met up with them about 4 years ago. Henley Rewind Festival.
Oh yeah.
We got chatting backstage, and everything's... They like us, we like them. They asked us to do this, to be their special guests, and so we're happy to do that,
One thing I was... Because I've obviously been, the internet is a great thing, not only for downloads, but also for, finding out stuff about people. I don't know if it was on the 25th anniversary tour, but apparently you were going to do some comedy on stage. What was that all about?
Comedy?
Yeah.
What happens on stage these days is, I tell you a joke, now and again.
Right, okay. Well, like a stand-up routine?
Yeah, like a kind of stand-up routine, yeah.
Cool,
and,
okay.
Just maybe one joke, and I say to them, have you heard my snail joke, for instance? And they all say, no. So I say, would you like to hear it? And they say, yeah. And it goes on like that. And I just tell a snail joke. And have you heard my snail joke?
No, you've got to tell me now that you've built this thing up. Right, go for it. Right, okay, everybody.
Well, I'll try.
Here we go. Right, this is Gary Christian about to tell a joke. Right, go.
Okay, there's this guy, he's cleaning his bar, and it's a lovely sunny day, his doors are open, and he's out there in the morning before the people come in, and he comes across a snail on the bar. And he goes, oh, God, look at this. And he just kind of gets his towel and flicks it right out the door, across the street, onto the grass verge across the road. Anyway, 6 months later, cleaning his bar, lovely sunny days, comes across the snail again, and the snail looks up at him and says, what did you do that for? I got you, Rob. When I first heard that, I really felt sorry for the snail,
Radio Pod. Get into it.
That was Gary Christian from the band The Christians. My name's Rob Smith, and you're listening to Radio Pod, free pop-up radio shows about you and your life, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk, and it's a 1980s celebrity special. Next, hear about Go West hanging out with Sylvester Stallone and how they nearly had a fight with Kiefer Sutherland over Julia Roberts. But right now, it's Dave Hill from Slade. Now, Dave, the band obviously well known for the hairstyles and the clothes.
Yeah.
Do you actually still have all of the crazy outfits? Because if so, your wardrobe must be very impressive.
No. I was very much glad I get in there. I was really thin then. I'm 60-odd now, so I'm not quite the same shape. But most of them would have been worn out, or chucked. Because I didn't keep the boots.
Oh, okay. That must have been a nightmare to walk around in.
I didn't think so, but some people did.
What's been your favourite outfit over the years?
The favourite outfit, I don't think I've got one. I think most of them were funny, and, there's all sorts of quips about metal nun and all sorts of funny remarks. But I think the most prolific ones were sort of the on-your-shoulder pad wide look of it was sort of, and also my hairstyle was very paramount as well. But no particular costume. I mean, I had so many, but they were all part of it.
What's been your craziest rock and roll moment?
I wouldn't say crazy in the sense of dangerous. I've never been crazy, but I mean, we were fairly stable as a group. We didn't do stupid things, you know. But it's also a business. I mean, you don't want to be doing crazy things. We weren't into drugs or anything like that, so we just used to drink, really. We were never totally comfortable with all the limousine rubbish that used to go on, you know. We used to get in them, but we enjoyed it, you know. We had some fun. I can't remember everything that went on, but we toured with Quao and went on to different countries with them and had some mad times, you know.
And do you still keep in contact with Noddy, by the way?
Yeah, we say hello occasionally, but that's about it.
Okay, so is he just kind of like retired and just not doing anything? Is he putting his feet up with a cup of tea?
He's doing what you're doing, and he's in radio. He does the occasional advertising, I think. But I think he's just basically doing what he fancies, really. He's not performing, that's for sure.
I heard he did the voiceover for a lift in a building in Birmingham or Wolverhampton or something. So when you go between the floors...
Yes, he could do that, you know. He's done lots of different things, you know, that's what he wants to do.
They've obviously got more time these days to relax and, you know, go on holiday. But when you're in public, do you sometimes, you know, go in disguise so you don't get hassled, or are you always Dave Hill from Slade?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, really. I think I can't hide the fact that people will recognise me. It's a bit like, I know you, don't I? And are you that? Are you? And I'm going, well, who am I? And I play a little game with people, you say, but it's a lifetime commitment, you know. I sort of bought the ticket, if you know what I mean, but it was a ticket for a lifetime. It wasn't a ticket for 4 years of fame and see ya. It's not just about dressing up and going on top of the pops. And wherever I go, people are going to be reminded of their youth.
I mean, you still are touring, and obviously you've been in the music biz for over 40 years. But obviously, as you get older, it's going to get more tiring. So do you have to keep fit in a certain way, or...?
Well, yes, I mean, I had a stroke 3 years ago, and I survived that. And, I mean, as respects going on stage and playing music and having a good time, that's more than good for me.
And how does it feel knowing that so many very mega famous bands say that Slade actually influenced them, like The Clash, Sex Pistols, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Kiss, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, even Oasis?
I think the thing is that you don't actually know who's watching half the time, you know. And I remember Bob Geldof, he used to come down a show we used to do in London. He was always there. And then he remarked in his book about, you know, saying one of the best times of his life was when he was working the traffic lights on the M25 when it was being built. And Slade was in the charts, and he was watching the girls go by. And that's how sometimes people look at things, you know. They go, you know, that was a great time.
And talking about, you know, like the early 1970s, obviously that's when you released Merry Christmas, Everybody. Is it true that was actually recorded in America in August in the middle of a heat wave?
Yes, it's true. Yeah, in New York. Yeah, yeah. It was certainly not Christmas.
Did you like decorate the studio to get into the Christmas spirit at all?
Well, we didn't think about that. I mean, it wasn't a question of like, oh, you got to have a Christmas tree in the studio because to make it feel Christmas, you all sing, you know, hey ho and all the rest of it. It wasn't like that. It was very kind of. It was put down as an idea rather than actually a decision. And it's a bit like, you know, this is a good idea. But it didn't sound particularly that great in July. But the magic of it was that in November, December, suddenly it started to sound like, do you know what, that song sounds really good now, doesn't it? You know, I mean, it's a bit like, you know, you don't put a Christmas tree in your house in summer. You know, it's not going to look right, is it? You know,
true.
But put a Christmas tree in your house in December, it's going to look right, you know. So that was the same with the song.
Dave Hill from Slade on Radiopod, sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. It's a 1980s celebrity special with a bit of the 70s thrown in there as well. My name's Rob Smith, and my final guest is one half of the band Go West. It's Richard Drummey. Hello, how are you?
I'm all
right, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So, I mean, obviously, as a band, you and Peter Cox, famous for massive hits like We Close Our Eyes, Call Me, The King of Wishful Thinking, which, of course, was from Pretty Woman. I didn't actually realise that you had other songs on other soundtracks as well.
Oh, yeah. We've been lucky with that. We just seem to have got a reputation for it. We did something for Rocky IV, which was fantastic because they flew us, just to do one track, they flew us over to LA, and we had to sit there for 2 or 3 days, which was terrible, sitting by the pool with the margaritas and waiting for Sylvester Stallone, because he wanted to meet us and give us, the pep talk before we started, and he just came in. And we talked to him for about half an hour, and he was absolutely fantastic. So we had a great time. So we did that one. We did White Man Can't Jump. We did Nightmare on Elm Street 704, and a few other lesser-known ones. Yeah.
Because I was going to mention about the whole, recording a soundtrack. Because quite often you don't get to meet the people who are in the films when you're doing the soundtrack. It's kind of a separate thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky in that we met Stallone, and when we did Pretty Woman, we did meet Julia Roberts. I don't really know how that happened. We were out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I say middle of nowhere. We were in Nebraska or something doing a gig. I think she just happened to be in town and happened to be at the event we were at, and somebody said, "Oh, there's that band that." Or maybe she heard the song and went, "Hang on, I know that song. That's in my show," as she calls it. She said, "Hey, you guys have got a song in my show." But we didn't get to talk to her long because I think we were giving it the full smarm, and all of a sudden Kiefer Sutherland, who was main squeeze at the time, sort of appeared out of nowhere and whisked her away.
Oh, I see. So you didn't get a chance to swap numbers or anything like that then?
Listen, I don't know if I'd have had the front to do that, but you never know. Actually, don't ask, you don't get, but maybe we should move on from there.
I imagine that your phone contacts list is actually full of celebrity numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few in there. There are a few in there, yeah.
Can you dish the dirt on the most famous person in there?
The most famous person in my, I don't know, I got Robbie Williams in there because I did some work with Robbie.
He's pretty cool. I've met him before, and he was a really nice bloke, actually. I really like him.
Robbie's lovely. He's absolutely lovely. I'd spent a week with Robbie in Miami working with him and a guy called Desmond Child.
He's a famous rock producer, isn't he?
Desmond wrote "Living on a Prayer,"
that's right.
La Vie Ioka, whatever that is. I can never know what the title of that song is. I worked with Des at a songwriters workshop in Devon, strangely enough, and we really hit it off. And he's I'm sorry to do the impression. He said, "Why don't you come over and work with me in Miami?" So I said, "Yeah, okay, sounds good to me." And then he said one day, he said, Richard. I said, yeah, what? He said, "There's this guy coming in. I don't know who he is. Do you know who he is? Robbie Williams. He said, take something or other." And I said, "Yeah, he said, take that, Des." He said, "Is he any good?" I said, "Yeah, he's been in the biggest band in England for a while, I mean, apart from the Stones." And so he said, "Will you write with me and him?" I said, "Yeah, of course I will." So so we wrote a song which hasn't as yet seen the light of day.
How would you actually sum up the 1980s? What was it like for you and Peter Cox in the band?
Well, I mean, let's just deal with 1980. I mean, the first half of the 1980s was living on bread and water and trying to get a record deal. I remember a guy at MCA saying, "I've heard the new song. I want to get together with you. Come up to town." And we went, okay, and both of us were completely, had no money. And I remember actually putting 56p's worth of petrol in the car. And I had a meeting with him, and he said, "Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, fantastic, love the song, can't wait to hear what you do next." We were like, "Couldn't you set that down the phone?" Anyway, so the first half was trying to get the deal, and in 85, the record took off, and that year was just absolutely crazy. Every day we were in a different country. Well, not every day, but every day. We were working every day, I will say that. Pretty much every day for that whole year, and you'd be in Japan and America and, just all over the world. So that was brilliant. And then after that, I suppose it was just kind of, trying to keep the ball in the air, really, Rob.
That's Richard Drummie from Go West. You've been listening to a 1980s celebrity special on Radio Pod with Rob Smith. Thank you to all of my guests, Toyah Wilcox, the Doctor from Doctor and the Medics, Andrew Roachford from the band Roachford, Dave Hill from Slade, Mark King from Level 42, Neil Arthur from Blancmange, Ricky Ross of Deacon Blue, Gary Christian from the Christians, and Richard Drummie of Go West, who you heard just a moment ago. This show was sponsored by equaldating.co.uk.
Thank you for listening to another Radio Pod special sponsored by equaldating.co.uk. Today's show will be available to download very soon. Log on to radiopod.co.uk to listen again and find out which shows are coming up. Radio Pod, get into it.